Hi, I'm Dan Komsky and welcome back to Connecting the Dots CK. This season, the program is evolving. We're going to start talking about stories of hope, local stories of hope that you might not hear otherwise. Today we've got my favorite interview so far, and I know we've had a lot of good interviews, but this is a really great one. You're going to enjoy the story of Dustin Gawne and Jody Anderson. It's a story of addiction, recovery, and friendship. We picked the story up as Dustin's describing the aftermath of a car accident that almost ends his life and leaves him unable to walk. Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you enjoy.
The moment that changed everything in my life.
Absolutely. And so your next step, you started struggling a little bit with some addictions.
So post leaving Parkwood Hospital, they put me into a retirement home, nursing home in Sarnia. I ended up with a coccyx infection, and that was another time-changing moment for myself. And
to be clear,
what is it?
It's coccyx, the lower part of the spine, and the back side of the body. So lumbar spine, sacrum, coccyx is our tailbone. Another word for tailbone. So he got a bed sore in a retirement community because he couldn't move. He was laying down so much. It was a pressure sore.
I got you. And let me just, for the audience, just to put this out there. So Jody Anderson is a chiropractor in town here. He's a medical specialist, and he's been a very major support for Dusty through this. So he's going to step in sometimes because just like Dustin, I'm kind of immune to the ability of understanding medical terms. So we're gonna get some nice medical terms from Jody. He's going to help us understand all this stuff. Sorry, keep on going. So you had a coccyx infection, for essentially a bed sore that turned
Nasty. Near death.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, very close to death. So I was taken out of there, moved in with mom and dad, and I mean, it doesn't matter what part of your life you're in, moving back home is never fun. So did my time in there until we found something in Chatham, and the moment I moved out on my own, the addictions picked up. I wasn't making the best decisions, but I mean, I don't know how you make the right decisions when you're trying to figure that part of your life out. It was something that I just wasn't used to, and I just bounced back into old habits, and old habits led to strengthening those into harder drugs, heavier drinking, more pill popping, and just a lifestyle of I don't even know what that lifestyle was, but it was intense for a couple of years there.
Absolutely. So you're avoiding, obviously you're doing drugs, you're drinking a lot, and I mean all kinds of different, we talked about this before, hard drugs, soft drugs. You were having a lot of fun, and a lot of people make that decision when they're in a real tough spot, right?
If I can say, what Dustin did say about that specific time in his life, he was running from something, so it wasn't necessarily even fun. It was, as he said, I don't know if he caught that, but he wondered why he didn't die in the accident. It would have been easier to die. So coming through and being told he might not walk again, and having an inability to process that, it was easier to die than it was to live. And the pain pills that were given to Dustin, he told me, were effective. And by the time he ran into us 7 years ago, he was doped out, he had a foot in the grave, and he was prepared to die, and preparing to die. So the drugs, which were part of his youth and part of the fun part of Dustin's life, became the very thing that was knocking him out from the pain and the reality of the life that he was trying to live.
And then you have no way of finding happiness. You're finding those moments of joy even in life because you've made everything so dull.
Does that sound about right?
Oh, 100%.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Wow. And then so, I mean, my next question is about how you started to overcome, but really I want to, so then you guys met at some point here and you're in a tough spot, you're in a tough spot. You guys meet. How did you meet? What happened what was that day? Do you remember that day?
I remember the day very, very clear. So his wife is a big part of my life. From the time I was a young kid, she was my after school, my PA day instructor, just a person who I really, really liked. I was in town. I was doing some shopping for, I think I was going to apologize to one of my family members for something I had done.
Getting flowers to apologize.
That's definitely what it was. I wasn't going to go there.
Some of us have apologized enough to understand.
So
and we all understand.
Yeah, that's right.
I bumped into Colleen's his wife, and she took one look at me, and I was a mess. I was close to 300 pounds. I was, drinking 60 ounces of vodka a day. I was a mess. So she just simply said, I think it's time to come and meet Jody. And at that point, I'd been in Parkwood and I'd been hurt by their doctors. I had some serious trust issues. Without going into it, I just had serious trust issues. But I knew Colleen, and I knew that she wouldn't lead me astray. So I got in to see Jody.
Now, when you went to see him, were you going in to see him as a chiropractic? Like going in to see him to be treated as a chiropractor?
Even knew.
Did you know it as a chiropractor? You just was like, Colleen told me to come see it.
We had seen each other in passing, but we didn't know each other well.
Okay.
And when I came in, I was still using heavily.
Mm-hmm. Now you're still like, what state are you in? You're not walking.
I'm on a walker.
Walker.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in a walker. I go into his practice in West Lorne, and I've got a chip on my shoulder. I'm arrogant, and can you do what you say you do? I trust issues. So we work, and I'm like I said, I'm a messy human being at this time still, and we had to have a sit down because Jody was taking care and picking up my medical at that time. It still is, and he simply said, in layman's terms, shit or get off the pot. You're taking up valuable space. And that was the conversation that changed everything for me, because you're putting in everything you had. So we changed up. I met him July 5th, August the 17th. So a month and a half later, I sobered up completely. No drugs, no smoking anymore, no booze, no pills, no nothing. I put everything I had into this. And we went to work.
Was that a decision that happened after? So after you met, was it you're laying in bed and thinking about the conversation, saying I really have to straighten out, or do you find that was that an organic thing that happened, that I've got something?
I got myself in trouble. I don't know, I disappointed you, or if the fact that we had to have that conversation. Everybody in my life was, still there for me, but I was disappointing everybody. And for the first time in my life, I just kind of grabbed on and decided it was time to do something different, because what I was doing wasn't working. So that conversation, getting myself in trouble and just wanting more now.
And you say, okay, bag it. Enough with this, the drugs, enough with the booze. I'm gonna get to work.
So I'll reflect back some of Dustin's conversations about this specific topic. He had been coming in high and drunk, missing appointments, and I run a very busy clinic with some really complex cases. So Dustin wasn't special in my world. So we treated him as we do everybody in our clinic, with love, and we're pretty open with what we do. And so we really embraced Dustin with all of our patients, and it was a pretty open concept. And I helped Dustin understand that he was taking up valuable space, and there were patients who needed the chair that he was sitting in that we booked, and my staff was tied up with him. And I said, if I'm going to lean in as much as I am, and I was picking up his bill, and that really didn't matter to me from anything. It wasn't a factor, but it was a factor for us because that was the value we were exchanging. Mm-hmm. And it was my time and my staff's resources. I said, if I'm going to lean in, then you got to lean in too, because if one of us leans in more than the other, we're both going to fall. And we physically leaned in with each other, because Dustin wasn't comprehending everything at that point. He had some cognitive issues. He was high as a kite. And we were just getting to know each other. So the universal sign of falling down was available to both of us.
Right.
And he was pretty unstable at 300 pounds. So it was a moment in our life where he kind of had an aha moment. And I simply said to Dustin, and he's reflected back to me that this was pivotal, if you choose to die, I can't support that. I'll attend your funeral because you're a great guy. My wife seems to love you. I don't know what she sees in you. But I'll go to your funeral out of respect. But I'm not going to help you die. But if you want to live, I'm in. All in. And that was a moment that we had quiet. Nobody was around. It was a private conversation. And I think he kind of woke up. And at that point of your life, Dustin, he told me, he had disappointed a lot of people. He was disappointing himself. And as it related to this, I was kind of the first person that really, I think, didn't enable his ways. And I called him to action. And we've all been involved in sport. And we talked a little bit about that off camera. Dan and I and Dustin and I talked about our responsibility to a team. And he had been an athlete and I'd been an athlete. So we came at that moment and said, we got to play for team here. We got to play for the coach. And if I'm going to be your coach and you're going to be part of this team and I'm going to be part of your team, we got to work together.
100%.
And it was almost like a light switch went off. And he decided to, on his own, to get sober off of all these crazy drugs. I don't know what withdrawal he could have went through, but I'm sure it wasn't pleasant. And he muscled through like we need to in those muddy days when we're training and we're broken. And he came in and all of a sudden it was like a light was shining. And I think pride was the thing that I started to see in Dustin. Pride to show up.
Mm-hmm.
Pride to be accountable to somebody else. Pride in himself and pride that he was showing his family that he could do this. And pride to himself that he could overcome these obstacles and he had a team of people around him. And I'm going to say for the record, and this is important for our audience to know, there was no judgment. And that was a really important thing that Dustin communicated to me, that we didn't judge his past behaviors. In fact, it wasn't even part of our conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
What really mattered was that Dustin showed up, that he was putting the work in, because we've all had our own obstacles in life, and I was able to share some insight to Dustin that I think was relevant, and we didn't make a big deal of it, and he got on with it, and that was pretty much it, and that was our first month of dating. And I was ready to break up with him.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go down with the ship. I wasn't his captain. I wasn't designated captain at this point in the game. And as a good captain of a sturdy ship, I had a lot of people to support. And Dustin is now really our captain. He's showing a lot of people how to navigate really rough waters.
I'm going to segue. I thank you for that because number one, you're going to be able to see it in the audience, but I mean the connection that you guys have with each other in terms of this, this journey, is just so apparent. When I met Dustin, I'd seen him around the gym, and we both kind of are maybe a little bit gym rats, maybe more than other people. So we see each other around the gym, and he's walking around and he's talking to people, and for a while he had a cane, and I noticed him, and I thought there's a real happy guy, and I don't like necessarily talking at the gym.
Right.
I like just
get to work.
So I'm like, well, I'm gonna have to avoid that guy because we're gonna end up talking.
Yeah.
But like I said earlier, I'm looking for good men. I'm looking for good men that are going to actually do good work in the world, right? Good people. And within seconds of talking to him, I knew that we had to have this interview, and I knew that that this story had to be told.
Yeah.
So again, just going back to thank you guys for being here, and Jody, nice to meet you finally.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Here. So that's great. Let me just see if I can get back on task here. So that, in terms of motivation to overcome your addictions, this is a loaded question because you just answered a whole bunch of what was your motivation. But if you were to narrow it down, and it's got us, I would think somewhere in your relationship, was it just somebody having your back that wouldn't put up with your shit?
Yeah, a lot of that. I'm a father as well, so I've got 2 children that need a father, and it took me a while to figure that part out. But just having the love and the support. I grew up with the love and support. Mom and dad are very great people. Outside of that, I didn't have that, and when this all came to, and it felt right. It felt like there was time for the change. I had been sober. It was more of a trial basis when I did it. I didn't actually mean to do it.
Sorry, Dad. I didn't mean to quit drinking.
It was funny how it worked, because that happened. We had that conversation, but my aunt and uncle were down across from England, and they had their son died of cirrhosis at my age at that time. I was 35 years old, and they were there for 3 weeks. We were all roommates together, so I just did it, and then I just continued on, and I felt better and better. We were able to do more work, because for the longest time we didn't get hands on me. When I say hands on me,
I wasn't able to do manual work.
Right.
Because I also do manual work. I wouldn't describe me as a chiropractor. I
No.
mean, my professional designation is that of a chiropractor, but that's a small piece of our puzzle. And for the longest time, I couldn't. I mean, the guy's got titanium rods in his spine.
Right.
It's tricky
To
territory.
adjust a spine that's got titanium rods.
So we had to be obviously cautious with the approach, and he was so wired that that wasn't the approach anyways. And so my work with complex cases has taught me I got to calm down the nervous system first. So fortunately, the work that took me to Toronto was really specialized work in the area of calming down nervous systems and treating the nervous system. So there's a medical modality that I happen to specialize in that I was very well prepared for when I met Dustin. So my blessing was that I was called to action in Toronto, worked behind the scenes of professional and Olympic sport with really complex cases. So I had a lot of alumni that came in that, as you would know, would be injured, through the field of sport. So I've seen a lot of really, really complex cases. So by the time Dustin came into my life, 10, 15 years later, I was ready to deliver. And we've talked a little bit about the blessings that have been provided to me, and I told Dustin I believe in God, and I think that I was chosen to do some things on this planet, and I'm ready to work. So we're gonna have to have a lot of faith in each other. And can I be open?
Yep.
Dustin said, I don't come from that place. But I believe in you, Jody, and I have faith in you. So if we can be okay there, then we're good. So I said, I can carry that. I've been a leader of a team in my life, and I also am a father. I'm a leader of my family and of my clinic. And so we got on that train very specifically, and wasn't able to get my hands on him because he was so wired. So we calmed his nervous system down. I happened to work in the space of head injuries, spinal cord injuries. I had my own fair share and treated enough guys from professional sport to know the area, and it worked. Dustin responded really, really positively, and I have a suspicion that it helped him through his withdrawals, and it helped calm him down. He had been previously in his youth on Ritalin type medicine to calm him down. He was an ADD type kid, and I think he just hadn't really found himself. So calming him down, kind of yoga like balance, was really, really beneficial. And then eventually I was able to do manual work, and we can probably skip that part of this piece of the puzzle because the specifics really haven't mattered to us. And we haven't defined what I do, and I don't really define what I do, because at the end of the day it was a hug and love and support and teamwork, and now he's leading the ship.
It's really interesting to me that the dominoes that had to actually fall into place for this all to work. And just between you two, just for this to happen, for your health journey to take the turn it had to take, you had to have all your experiences in Toronto, and you had to have the belief that you have.
100%.
Which is, I mean, just, it gives people faith. That kind of thing gives people faith.
100%.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you for that. Okay, so Biggest challenges what's the biggest challenge you faced, do you think? If you, or top 2 or 3 or 1, or is there something that really stands out in terms of, obviously overcoming paralysis is a big, big challenge, right? But
we've talked about some of the bigger stuff, but I think it was when COVID hit. Like, we've talked about this a lot, you and I, because when COVID hit, the world was shutting down, and we were trying to keep.
You were ramping up.
Yeah, I was just getting started, and as far as I'm concerned, I think COVID actually benefited me. I got in the best shape of my life. I asked him, I said, "What do you think about me working out, getting jacked?" He said, "Give her."
Hell yeah.
So I think that year I did a 25-day, 100-kilometer challenge that I.
Walking.
Yeah, talk about that. Talk about the tell us about the challenge. So start that, like, not necessarily where you got the idea to do it, but just what was the challenge and what was the response from the people in
So I got in contact with a gentleman here in town that kind of had a fitness background. His name's Ben, and I said to Ben, I said, "Listen, I want to do something here. COVID shut down all the businesses. I'm bored, you're bored. Let's do something. I want to get in shape." He's like, let's start something on social media. So we did the 25-day, 100-kilometer challenge. That was just a daily walk that we went on. I put where we went. I would take pictures, and it was funny.
Explain to me walking though at this point. What are you walking?
I hadn't walked more than
2 months ago,
750 meters.
You were walking with a cane still, right? Like
I hadn't walked more than 750 meters at that time.
So you just pledged to walk 100 miles in 25 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when we were getting out, it was crazy how many people were showing up. We'd be walking through Paxton's Bush, and I can remember the first couple days, "Hey, you're Duddy Hines. I'm doing your challenge right now." And that was kind of cool that people were actually paying attention. And by the end of it, I had walked a restaurant and kind of celebrated the walk that they were doing, celebrated the getting through my thing that I wanted to get through, and I met a lot of really great people. It made me want to do some more stuff, and I ended up that summer swimming across Rondo Bay. It was one of the things growing up around here everybody talked about, nobody did, and or that I didn't meet or see. So I wanted to at least say I did it. Was the least amount of fun that I think I've ever had.
I don't know if I'd want to do it.
I've done some pretty weird stuff in my life.
So at a time when COVID struck and the world is divided and there's so much division, and I mean, obviously it still is, everybody knows there's division in the world. You're the guy that when COVID strikes, you start a social media movement, and you can't walk. You're not a high-end walker at this point.
No.
Like, now you're pretty damn good. Like, you move around pretty good, right? Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
And at the end of that walk, I sometimes forget to point this part out, but the gentleman that I had met at the beginning of this, Bruno, who became a large part of my fitness journey, he's 60 some odd years old doing Ironmans, like 5 to 6 a year. He's wild. He dropped a bike off at the end of the ride, or the end of the walk, sorry, and I was like, man, I can't even lift my leg up over a bathtub wall to get into the shower. How the hell do you think I'm going to put my leg over this bicycle? I'm looking at him, like, just, you son of a bitch. And lo and behold, I got on that thing, and I have not been able to stop riding a bike since. It has been one of my game changers. Walking on uneven ground is a bit difficult for me. So going places like to the point in Rondo, somewhere that I truly loved, I was never going to see that again. And when that day hit where I rode my bike out there, I have not cried like that in a very, I don't know if I've ever cried like that. It was an ugly cry. It was a loud cry. I was extremely happy by myself. But now that everybody knew, it was that bicycle was a game changer for my my identity.
You described it as freedom.
Yeah, it was very
Yeah.
free.
Yeah.
What? So now you've got some more plans with the bike.
I do.
Okay, so tell us about that.
So,
And then Jody, how are you? I want to know your involvement in this as well. Like,
Sure. So, just to really quickly circle back to the pandemic, world shuts down. Dustin's world gets very small. He's not able to interact legally able to interact the way that he's accustomed to. He had just kind of come back to life at that point, really. Made some significant progress, was making serious strides towards getting fitness as part of his life. Then the world shut down, and he got dark and lonely. And at this point, his social circles shrunk down, his support network shrunk down. There was a question as to whether or not I was going to be able to work, and I was a big part. He was 3 times a week to see me. So, you know, my 10-year-old, who Dustin is very involved with in hockey, he's a high-level hockey player, so Dustin's part of his life now, asked me simply, "What are you going to do today, Dad? You know, the world shut down." I said, "I'm not sure, but I think a few people are going to show up. I better get to work."
that's right.
So I was legal to work at that point. I was part of the community that was legally able to participate in work activities.
I think they called us essential workers.
Essential.
Yeah,
and I think there's a gray line there, but in any event, my high purpose brought me to work that day. And Dustin came in, and I said, if we're going to go to hell in a handbasket, we better start getting to work. And that's when the manual stuff really started. And I have a lot of faith in the human spirit. I have a lot of faith in my abilities. Dustin had some trust in me, and we got to work. And I'm telling you, he got off that table, and he's swinging his legs around. He's still a pretty big, unstable guy, and I'm like, hold on, buddy. And it was from that moment forward, he was like Forrest Gump. He just didn't stop. And anybody that was in the building that day was bawling their eyes out because they saw this miracle happen. And he really hasn't stopped. So we unlocked something significant, I think physical and maybe, you know, maybe spiritual. I don't know what it was, but things just started happening in a really big way after that. And off he went. So we continued to support him to the best of our ability, emotionally and whatever we could do. And I realized at that point, there's Bruno and there's Ben and there's all these other people. I'm a small piece of a puzzle back here. We all have a role in a team. And he just kind of went. And it was like he was just leaving port. It was amazing to watch from a clinical perspective. You know, there's now pride involved in this.
Of course it is.
Even though I'm behind the scenes, like I've played this role in professional sport behind the scenes, nobody even knows I exist. And I saw this almost identical thing happening, and I went, okay, we've done our job. And off he went, and he kept on checking in. Can I do this? Can I do this? Yep. And he just kept on setting crazy goals for himself. And we talked a little bit about the importance of understanding to plan, because if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right?
Yeah.
And he just kept on blowing expectations out of the water, and I think he was kind of reborn in that moment of this person who is a physically able person. And we saw this happening. Our whole clinic watched Dustin from behind the scenes. And I said to him one day, I said, "You're inspiring a lot of people." He said, "What?" I said, "Dude, you gotta watch what you say and watch your step because people are watching you." And I think he just took on this new identity. Does that sound fair?
Yeah.
And he's literally run with it. We've tried the running thing. Yeah, the cry on Rondo Point might not have been pretty, but the running. So he swims, he bikes, and he walks very, very well. And from that day forward, the day the pandemic shut us down, I think it was a Monday. I saw this rebirth. It was like through the ashes rose this phoenix, and then the crazy ideas started coming quickly. Can I get jacked? Yep, because he used to work out big time. He was an athlete. He worked out. He liked muscles, and so he did that. And then he started getting on the bike and said, "Can I ride far?" I said, "Sure." I used to do triathlons. I said, if I can do it, you can. If there's no difference. Yeah, you got an injury and you got some things, but I think you started using them as fuel to overcome the next obstacle. And at some point, I think his addiction to drugs and alcohol and his obsessive nature of things turned into good. And he started channeling that energy, as you would have had to do to be a professional athlete, into something that led this goal of you thinking you could be a professional football player. So whether we're a teacher or a doctor or a farmer or a football player or a guy that's trying to reach some pinnacle in his life, he put all of this energy into this thing of being the best he could be. And he found his physical body, which is the space that I work in. So having this familiarity, I watched him, supported the heck out of him, then eventually said, do you think I could ride across the country?
This is the story I was trying to get to, just so you know. Can I ride it? What did he say?
Can I ride?
I know what he said, but what did he say?
What did Jody say?
Yeah, when you asked him that.
He looked at me, kind of stunned. I guess.
I said I need at least a year.
Oh, yeah, that.
Because of the history, truth be told, he's done cocaine, he's done crazy drugs.
Yeah.
And anybody that's ever done a marathon or any big events, there's a physical preparation component. You can't go from couch to marathon without, and I've been in the water with guys that have died.
Yeah.
Because I went from couch to triathlon to get my life back. I've had my own physical checkered past. So I said, I can't support you dying.
That's right.
Now that we're living.
You already told him that.
Now that we're living.
You already gave him that.
You know, my brother's a cop. He said, don't end up on the front page of the paper unless you won the lottery.
That's right.
You know, so we had some humor around that, but the practical piece to this is there's a physical preparation. So I said, now it's time to get practical. And he hasn't done a lot of practical things in his recent life. I said, you know,
I didn't even know what the word meant.
didn't know what it meant. And I take a Richie Cunningham approach to things, and I'm the nerd version of Dustin with pride, and said we have to have a plan. And that's when we started having conversations, bigger conversations, about my work in behind the scenes of professional sport, and Olympic and Paralympic. And I said, I see you as an athlete. And my vision of this is to prepare you for the Olympic Games, which is 4 years out. Or he said, 4 years? I don't know if I've got the staying power for 4 years. You know, I'm kind of all over the place. I said, yes, you are, but we got to channel that energy. He said, how about a year? I said, well, we can do a year, 2 years. So it's been, I think, 2 years of preparation.
2 years prep.
And in that moment, I saw a new person emerge. Because he had been trained by his father to be an elite goalie. So he had known how to get up early in the morning and ride his bike, 10 kilometers before he got on the bus to go to school. Mm-hmm. He had done the 5, 6 o'clock in the morning drills in the arena where Dad opened the back door of the arena to train where the kids were just getting out of bed. So he understood this conceptually, and we're from a family of athletes, and Dustin knew that. He knew our kids. We did the same thing. So we all kind of started training together. And we all started getting up early. And Dustin really, really embraced that.
Really? All of you started getting up early together?
Yeah, so we jumped in the lake with Dustin at 20 below zero with Bruno to do a cold water dip. Dustin's, like, we're heavy into sport as a family. It was the thing that I think we met. I think we had two common things, if I could say. We're both parents, we're both dads, and that's a really similarity that we have. There's common ground. I mean, Dustin's lived a different life than me. I'm not tattooed, and I don't know about drugs and alcohol. Right? It's not a place where we can meet. But our kids, our love for the kids, and when I heard Dustin talk about his desire to clear his name and to make his kids proud, I get it.
Yeah.
I
think there's a lot of dads get that. A lot of dads know that you make mistakes, then you got to earn it afterwards.
And from one dad to another, I want my kids to think I'm cool too. And I think this is a cool project, and I think you're a cool guy, and I think my kids would really respect this. And he kind of saw a reflection in a mirror. He says, they're going to respect me for what I'm doing? Yeah. Yeah. And they do. They love Dustin. Yeah. And there's a really strong relationship there. So the parent thing really resonated with us. Mm-hmm. And then our backgrounds in sport, it was easy.
Yeah.
Easy.
Well, if he can be coached, you can coach him.
It was easy.
Yeah.
So I saw an opportunity to step into a role that raised my requirements at this level. I've been involved in sport my whole life, and at this level, head coach isn't a role that I've ever had. And I'm a doctor, so I'm well educated in the areas of clinical management. I did exercise physiology at Western. I played a bunch of sports, worked with pro athletes, but never had this role. So he trusted me to take on a really big role, which upped my game. And big games, big guys got to stand up.
Yeah.
So we stood up together. He raised my game, and I've been chasing him ever since.
And so now the plan is?
I'm gonna bike across Canada in this July, August, and September. It is a 7,500 kilometer bike ride. Better part of 3 months.
Amazing.
Real excited.
Yeah, it's a long ride.
It's such a long ride.
Been doing 50 to 80 kilometers a day to prepare.
I do a lot of training. I'm not worried about it at all. It'll just be a 3-month vacation, I guess.
I'm sure there might be a couple tough days here and there. What do you think?
I'm gonna let my arrogance just take over, and I'm gonna be real cool, and it'd be simple.
So then, just to wrap up, number one, I'm really hoping I can have you guys back and do this again. If not here, then on my podcast. I think the story's fantastic, and I know Paul, and I know that there's a lot of people that are going to want to hear this story. It's just a pleasure to be here with you. I do want to ask you one last question, and I'm going to ask you both individually, because I think actually I didn't see it that way at first, but compare yourself today, how you feel right now, with before. And I'm not even sure.
Before accident?
I'm not
Before
even sure. I think before accident.
Okay.
What do you think? How do you feel today versus then? Do you remember how you felt then? That'd be the first question. About yourself, about who you are?
Before Dustin, I sometimes think about myself as messy. I've always had good intention. I always wanted to be a good person. I was just made some bad decisions, and I think who I am now is a lot of the same guy, but minus the messiness. I still want to lead with good intentions. I still want to, make a good name for myself. I want people to, when they meet Dustin Gawne, they remember that moment. He's a great, good person. He, I think the old version of me, he was sad. He was just, trying to hide from a life that that I built, that I lived for so many years, because it wasn't just a couple years, it was a solid couple decades. So,
do you recognize that there are countless men who have built that life for themselves that they can't get rid of?
It's I meet a lot of people, and sometimes I forget how lucky I am.
Lucky, and you put a hell of a lot of work in.
It's a full-time job trying to be this person. It's not an act. It's just a lot of work between sobriety, a spinal cord injury, dad, friend, gym rat. It's all stuff I enjoy doing though. So I'll continue to work myself and go till my tank's empty.
Well, God bless you for that. Jody, I wasn't going to ask you this question because I didn't know, but after sitting here with this interview, I'm watching the connection between you, and I'm watching how I feel like you've got an answer for this question. So what compare yourself now to before you brought Dustin into your heart?
Yes, I've never thought of that, so thanks for asking that question. Upon reflection, I'd say before Dustin, I lived in high purpose. I had a vital role to play in the lives of thousands of people. So I was meeting my responsibilities. I was meeting some potential in my life that was meaningful. I was a father of 3. I am a father of 3 and a husband. So my life was really good, and not near as colorful as it is now. Dustin's invited me to a place where I've learned to accept alternative ways of thinking, and helped me mature in the ideas that I can have a role in people's lives that are meaningful in a way that I didn't know they could be. I didn't see myself necessarily working in a capacity beyond clinic as a profession in this friendship role. I didn't know that I could. I didn't know that I was allowed to. I don't even know what the rules are. I hug my elder female patients, and I don't think that the rules that are defined whether I'm allowed to do that, because I'm a male doctor.
Yeah.
So there's restrictions, and you know, the love and joy that we're getting out of what we're watching with Dustin is something that I wasn't prepared for. I didn't even know it existed. And somewhere in this relationship, I changed from this professional who can enter the day with a lot of emotion, because there's good and bad in our days, and there's not always success. And I have to be really careful not to wear my heart on my sleeve, because then I bring that home and it affects my life. So we're taught to keep a bit of a distance, because we do some complicated things. I'm in pain management with people who are really complex cases in a rough time in their life. So somewhere along the way, we became friendly, and I became part of Dustin's life in a way that I dreamed about, to be honest, and to be open. And now he's a part of my kids' lives. And I didn't know that I'd ever let a guy with tattoos who is a drug addict be part of my kids' child rearing, and he is. So I think where I've grown is to understand that I can't judge books by their covers, and thank God I was brought up to not do that. And maybe I was doing that because I'm just not used to this. And I think if I've learned anything is good people are good people in all shapes and sizes, and that my kids can learn from some hardship and some good lessons from good people, and I can be part of that life in a way that Dustin's invited me into that I didn't even know that existed. And I'd invite people of our community to embrace people of all shapes and sizes and colors and creeds, and the community is growing, and we're going to have some new people come to the community. And I think if we look forward, we'd love to be part of the community in a way that shares a story. And I'm not sure how we're going to connect or where Dustin's going to go with this, but he's pushed me, I guess, back into a place where I'm growing again in a way that I didn't even know I wasn't. And as a dad of 3 and a guy who's been through a lot in my own life, I was coasting, and Dustin showed me that you can't coast. You just can't coast.
What a great lesson.
Yeah.
Well, he's shown a lot of people you can't coast. And so are you. And I got to say this, man. I've been looking for good people because I feel like there's a whole bunch of good people.
There really are.
And I feel like that all of the news is about bad. And I need this story out, and we need more people to know about this story, and we need you guys to keep on doing the good work you're doing. So thank you very much.
Yes, and to that point, Dustin's met hundreds and hundreds of people through his journey who are great people and love seeing what's going on, and he's invited some of them along, kind of like the Pied Piper. There's people that are following this, and now with social media, he's literally getting people around the world following this story. So there really are a lot of good people, and I'm glad that you have an avenue to share that story. And I suspect with this walk, just to be clear, it's a movement. So his movement is going to turn into hopefully inspiring some other people in the local community. And we're really good at helping nations abroad. This is a local guy doing local things for his local community. And what I caught early on in Dustin's story is that's what he wants to do. He wants to put up a homeless shelter here because he saw it on his walk that people are living in the streets here.
Yeah.
He's got this lofty goal of raising $1 million on this journey of his, whether it's on the bike ride or beyond, to put up a homeless shelter. Because we need it here.
In Chatham.
In Chatham.
We need it here.
We need it here.
Chatham. This is what we've been talking about for a year.
And Dustin's been invited into the local schools to talk to school kids about decision making. This is a guy who's got his PhD in decision making. Some of them not so great.
That's right.
And if anybody can speak to this, I think we've got a guy right here, a person right here who can speak to, what happens when you make some really bad decisions early in your life. And to us parents, be careful. Because he pulled the wool over a lot of people's lives. He had the silver spoon in his mouth. His parents are phenomenal people. Wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for his parents. Mm-hmm. And early on, they were normal life. Had no idea what wool he was pulling over their eyes. And I think it's important for us parents to realize that, shit can hit the fan really quickly if we're not careful. And here, lots of temptations. Mm-hmm. If the other thing I've learned through all this is it's all around us.
Yeah. Well, it's like when you talk about small towns, we kind of joke about it, right? It's when the drug dealers know the doctors.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's the way it is because you all went to school together, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, it has been an absolute pleasure, and I just way surpassed anything I was expecting. So
awesome.
I just really appreciate you coming.
Awesome.
Okay, I got chills from it.
Yeah. All right. Well, Paul hasn't talked the entire time, so I know he must have done something.
I try not to cry at certain points. Anyway, because it was just a compelling story, gentlemen.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
Cool.
And I, like I say, we'll want to help promote your walk any way we can. We're going to want to help you in any way we can.
Yeah.
I need to set an appointment with you because I just see my name.
Gotcha. So, what's your podcast?
It's called All Star Living.
Okay.
I've shot one episode. I've got 2 more booked, and my goal is to start shooting them weekly. I got to get a bank of episodes together.
Okay. Gotcha. Right.
So, and my whole deal is it's about creating information about the habits that people should be putting into their life and the habits people should be taking out of their lives from the people who study it. So my first guy is a student of Huberman, the Huberman
Yeah.
guy I went to university with, who's a podcaster, and anyway. So the whole idea is that I'm dealing with anybody that's got any history in that, whether it's education, sports background, that has a platform, and I'm just trying to bring great ideas together. Well, guys, thanks very much for coming. Awesome. Very, very great to meet you and very great to have you in.
Pleasure.
And I'm looking forward to seeing exactly where all this goes.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Okay.
This is Dan Komsky with Connecting the Dots CK.